All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here on the Harmless Dave channel. Making some observations. This will be about my two interviews thus far with REO Speedwagon's bass player Bruce Hall. Just want to talk about some stuff, and this has nothing to do necessarily with the interview as far as how it went, which I think it went well. It's more just how the rock media tends to ignore certain things, especially when it comes to me. I think the only time they really paid attention to me is when Eric Clapton was on with me, and who knows? Maybe that'll happen again someday. But just you'll have to stay tuned for that. Anyway, doing what I do in real time for a few people, just like you there, and just like me here. Now, in both instances, when Bruce came on, I think there were some noteworthy things that transpired during the interview. Bruce Hall says he wants to put together some kind of an REO classic lineup, and he wants Kevin Cronin there, and then he wants to kind of pass the family business on to the kids, who apparently there are enough children of these guys, offspring, who can sing and play various instruments, and they could carry on the family business, the REO Speedwagon business, brand, whatever you'd like to call it. And I thought in both instances where Bruce discussed that possibility, I thought that was pretty noteworthy. I see all these headlines floating around in the classic rock world. So and so is going to auction this off, and another movie is coming out about this person's life, and that's big news. That becomes like a news cycle in the classic rock world. And so that's kind of perplexing that here's some classic rock red meat stuff. And because I think it's because it's me doing the interview, they just ignore it. It's in some ways it makes me feel good that they don't want to deal with me to some degree, but on the other hand, it's like, I think you're just if you're pushing back against me because you don't like me, then I can't, this what can I do? It's like going up against the beast, and it happens in media where you've got this person who's trying really hard to do what they love to do, and they're not going to be helped by the powers that be. And you got to look at the sponsorships, and who's paying for a lot of the advertising, or who's the actual advertiser for some of these sites. And then you put two and two together and you go, yeah, this guy here, he's a total lunatic when it comes to, certain medical products that saved thousands of people's lives back in 2021 or whatever. I push back hard against that, and I still do today. And that's not earning me a lot of points. I still have people that say I'm dangerous. That's a fun word. Imagine waking up in the morning and thinking, yeah, I'm a dangerous conspiracy theorist. That's me. I get up every day, and that's what I plan to do. I plan to create danger. You know, in the meantime, some people want to talk to me. Bruce Hall wanted to talk to me. Bruce and his wife, they don't think I'm all that dangerous. Otherwise, they wouldn't talk to me. We have great conversations too, off air. Like we're almost friends. It's pretty crazy. But I don't know. The reason I'm kind of venting a little bit here, and I'm trying to do it gently. I'm like, I guess it doesn't matter who I talk to. It's not going to get covered unless it's somebody so huge that they can't ignore it. But they try. They try very hard to ignore the content that I do. I mean, I interviewed Thomas Atlas. He's this great up and coming guitarist. It's somebody, by the way, that they should be covering. They won't. he's from the UK, number one, so strike one. Strike two, he's singing about the medical industrial complex and the information industrial complex and how many other, the political industrial complex. I heard Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about that in her uh, resignation speech that she gave, which I thought was very interesting because it's true. There is a political industrial complex, and we're all falling for this stuff. And these media outlets, they all rely on revenue, which is generated by some very suspect and very nefarious organizations who have been dominating the culture and dominating the political landscape now for decades. It's basically two sides of the same coin. If a third way really started to assert itself and people said, you know what, enough of this matrix, I'm going to get out and I'm going to try to make a difference in a different way. I want something honest and real. And a lot of the music, by the way, I try to promote on this little podcast show thing here is real. And maybe it's mostly for me. A few weeks ago, I went to see this guy. And this is somebody that the classic rock world could cover. Well, Dave, it's actually blues, and classic rock isn't blues. No, but classic rock, I guess, can be rap, right? Classic rock can be R&B. Salt and Pepper, right? They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame right now. Salt and Pepper. But this is not on anybody's radar. Why? I mean, this guy's been around for 40 years. You think he would have gained some traction? No, no. He's in a category, so we're just going to leave him there. Because if we start covering him, then we've got to cover other things like that. And there might be some kind of a resurgence, and people might realize, hey, this other stuff over here might be culturally active and interesting to portions of the culture, but it's not really the kind of music that this was at the beginning. It's completely different, and it has more to do with clicks and, getting a certain group of people to be interested in this art form, but it's a completely different art form. This is much closer to what classic rock or just rock in general is as a category. Even this, Mickey and the Motor Cars, even this, but it's in this category in Texas, and it's a subset of a subset. And so, okay, all right, well, they play guitars. There's a four-piece band, and it kind of sounds like rock to me. But what do I know, right? And this is where I start to lose it. Like, maybe I just don't understand that this is all morphing into one thing. And because I'm resisting a little bit, I'm kind of on the outside looking in. I'm just this old guy yelling at the cloud. I hear this a lot. And I'm into dangerous conspiracy theories. That's the other thing. I just want people to live. That's I know that's crazy, right? I want people to live. And I don't want to hear, so and so 45 is now unalive. What happened to him? Well, they don't say. They don't put the reason, but he's unalive now. He was alive yesterday, and people are kind of shocked by that. Or whatever age, could be older. And then you're going to get, well, it was their time. They're old, and so that's the end of that. And don't give it a lot of thought. Just move on. Stay in your lane, dude. So anyway, I wanted to vent a little bit about that. This is somewhat related to the Bruce Hall interviews I've done. And I think I'm going to do a little separate video about that because I think there was some interesting information that went forth. But the reason this whole thing is kind of imploding is because the people 30, 40 years ago who were invested in this either don't care anymore. Some of them aren't alive anymore. And the rest of them have kind of changed their perspectives, much like the Hall of Fame, where they say, well, it has to have the spirit of whatever to be considered, rock or classic rock or whatnot. And as that definition becomes harder to pin down, you lose what it really is. Okay, so if I say that, for instance, that Ray Fuller, and I hate to keep picking on this stuff, but it's a good example. I mean, this is just straight up blues, man. There's no rock in this. Okay, did you see the name of the band, the Blues Rockers? I don't know. I mean, Johnny Winter was classic rock, but it was blues oriented stuff. You go down the list, Eric Clapton, you go way back, the Yardbirds, Cream, all of that stuff was blues based. Early Black Sabbath was blues based. I mean, pretty much every band, I've heard Rick Beato talk about this, is that there was a rhythm and blues element to the music, which from whatever year forward has dropped, has decreased. And so now we have to redefine what it is because, this is kind of lowering the standards and saying, well, anything can be in there now. Doesn't matter so long as it has the spirit of rock in it. Dolly Parton, and I push back hard on Dolly Parton. I didn't like that induction. I didn't like Willie Nelson going in. I mean, Willie is a legend and kind of an outlaw, but if you're going to put Willie in, then you've got to put all of the country outlaws in there, and you haven't done that. And so it's not consistent. So you have to apply it, across the board. So just a few random thoughts on this. And I'll talk about Bruce Hall separately because Bruce has done 2 excellent interviews, and I've enjoyed those probably more than the other interviews I've done with pretty much everybody. I mean, I really loved interviewing Eric Clapton. And honestly, Eric, up until I started interviewing Bruce, was probably the funnest interview. And, if Eric comes back, I'm sure it might top the last one. But I want to talk about Bruce Hall, and I will do that in my next video. So anyway, I've showcased a bunch of things here inadvertently, but let's give you this one again. Devon Allman and the Blues Summit. Didn't see much on any classic rock websites about Devon Allman. Just don't see it. I don't see anything, it took like 10 years for them to discover like Tedeschi Trucks Band. And now, they cover those guys, but for many years they didn't. The reason they cover them now is because they're huge and they didn't get any radio airplay. You know what they got? They got fan support. People heard the music and said, hey, I like this. There are a number of jam bands out there, which I don't typically get into, but I'd love to see some of these jam bands get covered. But it's the same names you keep hearing of. Now they're focusing on the 90s. The 90s is a classic rock decade. I'm tired of decades. I want to hear some music. I don't care about what year it came out. I care about what it sounds like. All right. And there are a bunch of bands from all over the world that deserve some attention that aren't getting any. And people, of course, end up finding it on their own thanks to the algorithm or just their persistence searching out stuff if they really want to. Others have given up. And I completely understand why you would give up. Because at this point, it's exhausting. And there's so much going on when it comes to social media that everything drowns itself out. And if you can find one thing to grab onto in the midst of that and say, hey, I really like this stuff, good for you for doing that because it's unusual today. That's why people just rely on the things that they know. It's easier. That's why people keep buying tickets for these old bands. And they will until they can't anymore. Even if they morph into something else, they're still going to lean on the things that they know. So anyway, that's my confusing and schizophrenic commentary on the end of the classic rock era and why it's happening. And when I have more thoughts on this, and there are several facets to this that I have not covered, I will bring them to you. whether you want them or not. I will bring them to you. If you support this channel, if you like what's going on here, you can do it financially. You can support financially by doing Buy Me a Coffee, Patreon, YouTube memberships, or PJ Rock Super Chats. I'm kind of on my own out here. I don't know anybody who does what I do exactly the way I do it. It's not just music, it's politics, it's faith, it's culture. It could be anything. It could be the weather. I think I did an upload short the other day about some strange things going on in my neighborhood as far as the weather, or at least overhead, not exactly in the neighborhood, but above the neighborhood. And so, anyway, I thought that was interesting. So, you never know what I'm going to upload to this platform, but I try to make it random and interesting and thought provoking. And that's it for this particular episode. I'll be back to talk about the great Bruce Hall. And a lot of people know who Bruce Hall is, even though I'm getting some messages, and the messages aren't very nice. So, anyway, thanks for being here. God bless. I'll see you soon.